Good evening. Welcome, Keldin.
Thank you, Stephen.
This is very happy for me to have you on, almost it seems on a regular basis, which is nice to have someone to do the show with me.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Someone so erudite and open-minded at the same time.
We all do our best. Thank you.
I don't know. Now, we were talking, we had a couple of articles we were going to talk about,
but first an announcement, right?
You have an announcement, or I have an announcement?
You do, I believe.
You mean about that I won't be doing the show next week?
Is that correct?
Right, but yes. That, you know what we'll do will be the best of next week.
The best?
No, there is.
Well, I hope I make that real.
I don't know, but next week, actually for 2 weeks, I'm going to be going away, so they won't have me to, what's the word? They won't have me to kick around for a couple of weeks here in Cambridge.
That's too bad. Maybe we could do a blooper reel.
Well, we're gonna, well, they aren't. That's pretty hard to find in my catalog. Any kind of bloopers in the.
Yeah, I think basically this show is flawless.
Flawless, right? And we're gonna. It'll be the best of Steve Helfer. I think next week and the week after. And thank you for reminding me to let everybody know. And but we spoke a little bit about. We had a little bit of an argument with Sherry because Sherry said that there was some evidence, some kind of study, someplace that. Tobacco actually caused DNA damage, I think. Do you remember that discussion we had with Sherry?
Oh, yeah.
And I was...
Do your viewers remember that discussion?
Well, no.
Do they know who Sherry is?
But we'll get into that. Sherry is our excellent cablecaster. Yeah. And, she said, well, this is kind of irrefutable scientific information. And I expressed skepticism for several reasons. Number one, science and money are very, very closely, they're hand in hand. And science in politics is also very hand in hand. Like scientists like to present themselves as being above politics and disinterested, only concerned with the truth. And from my perspective, scientists are always trying to get money. They're always vying for money. They're always vying for recognition, especially when their science is being used to influence public policy. So grant money and, who gets to be the chairman of the department, and you don't want to produce data, unfriendly data that might make the chairman of the department look bad, or you don't want to go too strongly against the flow of things because you might not get published or you might not get promoted. I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, would you disagree with that? I mean, we've talked about this before.
Overall, yeah, I would disagree with that.
You would disagree with it?
I would disagree with that. I think that, while it might be harder to disagree with each individual point, the overall tone, to me, and the overall message that it conveys is far too pessimistic.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
I think that ignores the vast majority of science, which is actually done well. But I would encourage you to try doing some science and see how it is for you.
Well, I think the thing, as a lay person, the science that I get most involved with is science that is very much on the cutting edge of, well, I don't know if that's right, intersects with politics, public policy, particularly as it relates to tobacco, but with other issues as well. And I mean, there is an awful lot of pop science out there. I mean, every time I, look at the newspaper, there's another study that has some kind of correlation between some particular kind of food, for example, and either it's beneficial to health or it's harmful to health. And most of these studies really are just correlations, but it makes good press. It becomes good copy. I mean, the newspapers see it and they like it, and whoever the scientist is gets a bit of recognition, and perhaps it gets a little bit more, likelihood of receiving grant money from somebody.
So I noticed that effect myself, but I think that there's a really strong bias there, which is that you are aware of only the studies that are getting published in the newspaper.
Oh, right, true.
Right, so
yes.
What's not,
to some degree, yes.
What's not seen is the vast majority of studies that are fine and are not being published or spoken of in the newspaper just because they don't make good press. They're still part of the body of scientific knowledge, and they represent the majority of the field to an actual scientist, because an actual scientist isn't going to the Boston Metro to find out about the latest advances in her field. The latest scientist is going to her journal for that field to find out about the latest advances. And most of that stuff is not going to be reported on.
Well, a lot of that is, let's take something like the war on cancer, which was initiated by President Nixon around 1971. Cancer researchers claimed that they were within striking distance of understanding the cancer cell, and that it would be, that they hoped to have a cure for cancer by the year 1976.
Looks like they were wrong.
A bit, yes. And then in 1980, they promised to have a vaccine for AIDS. They projected time period was about 3 years.
I think they missed that too.
They missed that boat a bit, yes. And then
that's a shame.
In 2000, Bill Clinton announced that the genome was mapped, and that this would revolutionize medicine, and that and there was a man named Francis Collins, who is now...
Can I interrupt you
please,
for a second?
I'm going to go on and on for the rest of the program.
Are you just mad that various predictions about how great science could be in the future didn't come true?
No. Okay. What I'm saying is routinely, people in the scientific profession give the public this idea that they're on, especially in medicine, that they're on the verge of some kind of tremendous breakthrough, and all they need is a few paltry billions, and they're going to have the cure for this, that, or the other thing. And this is over and over again. And then around 2010, all of a sudden...
Can I interrupt you again?
Please.
Are you aware of the dozens of scientists that make pessimistic claims that aren't reported on?
Such as, can you give me an example?
Well, let's talk about fusion. I'm a member of the fusion religion. I'm a card-carrying member. But if you walk around my department, you're going to find plenty of people who say, yeah, fusion for commercial power generation. Commercial power generation, meaning it makes a profit, is at least 100 years away, right? Okay, they make up the majority of the field, probably, right?
Pessimists, you say?
You might call them pessimists, yeah. Maybe. The point I'm making, however, is that you won't hear about them. You're going to hear about the guy at whatever it is, Skunkworks, that says we're going to have fusion in 2 years, right? Because that sounds incredible, and that makes it onto the press. So what I see here is just another instance of something sensational making the press, but real science, or the majority of the scientific field, just keeping to themselves.
Well, Francis Collins right now is, I believe, the director of the National Institutes of Health.
Okay.
So he's a big shot. And, every time there is some, like with stem cells, when Barack Obama said the federal funding would go for embryonic research, I mean, he just talked about how this would be the most greatest thing for the world. And he was
president.
You know, what Francis Collins did.
Oh, okay.
Right, and, you know, I mean, he's head of the NIH, so that's, you know, that's a scientific, and in 2010, you know, he predicted a complete, 2000, he predicted that by 2015, you know, they would be rolling out cures for everything with the genome, having mapped the genome. I mean, he routinely does this, and others routinely do it so that they can get public support, so that they can get legislators to throw them a lot of money.
But, okay. So my first question is, how much is a lot of money relative to overall appropriations? Number two, is it part of his job description to do this?
It certainly would seem that way.
Okay.
Yet he is a scientist, supposedly.
Well, he's clearly, if that's part of his job description, then being a scientist is not necessarily his main function in that role. But number three is, what troubles you about this?
Well,
Let's start with number one. What percentage of total appropriation?
Oh, I can't give you that, but National Institutes of Health does have a lot of money at its disposal.
Well, I mean, we're talking three big things, right? In total government spending, on the federal level, right?
Right.
We're talking about Social Security, Medicare, military. That's like 85%. So literally everything else makes up just 15%.
Okay.
So are we talking 5% of total appropriations?
Well,
NASA gets 2%.
It's a principle. It's the principle
it's
that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's a principle, and we have this idea that scientists are kind of non-political, above the fray types of people. And, you know, I'm sure that many are, probably the majority are, but the kind of scientists who are correlated, there we are, with public policy, you know, there's all kinds of corruption going on there. And when I say corruption, I don't mean, you know, people walking around with bags of money and sneaking it behind their back. I just mean the kind of human corruption that we all have.
Do the bags of money say correlation on them?
No, but most they do. I mean, you know, when you get federal funding to come up with some kind of study that's going to be used for some new kind of anti-smoking measures, you better come up with some good data that's going to indicate some new harm that is supposedly with tobacco. And, you know, as I like to say, that any scientist who can't design a study to get the data he wants is no scientist.
Ouch, that really hurts.
Oh, I'm sorry, Keldin. I'll take that back. But
I'm a bad scientist.
Well, I didn't say you were. You know, but okay. Last week, we only have 10 minutes left, and we don't. I think there's something called scientism. Are you familiar with that word?
This is. I'm not familiar with that nomenclature.
You're not?
No.
It's the idea that it's not my, it's not my word. It's a word that it has been talked about in philosophy and in the philosophy of science, where when you evoke the word science, all of a sudden you have this kind of authority that can sweep over people. And they will defer, they will no longer use their own judgment, their own reason, their own experience, because, it's scientifically it's this way, or scientifically it's that way. And I think to a large extent we all are scientists in our lives.
So is this phenomenon dying?
Scientism?
Yeah, because Congress certainly doesn't make any decisions based on science.
I don't think scientism is dying, no, but I think I don't know about that. I just don't know about that. That's quite a sweeping statement you just made.
Well, thank you.
That Congress doesn't make any.
My friends and I talk all the time about what our prediction is for how many decades will have to elapse before Congress makes 50% of their decisions based off of scientific results. Because right now we see a lot of decisions made basically without regard for the current science. It's not that they are anti-science or pro-science, it's that it just doesn't come up in the discussion.
And are you going to give me an example in terms of nuclear energy or in terms of climate change or something else?
I mean, I would love to talk about both of those, but those two examples aren't good examples of what I'm saying. Actually, they're more examples of the science coming up, but not really being well regarded. For instance, the science about climate change, something like 3% of climate scientists don't believe in anthropogenic climate change.
Right. That's
Yet
the figure
that 3% is enough to stymie any sort of action in terms of cap and trade or some other means of internalizing the externality of greenhouse gases.
Right. Externality, yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
a cost. It's a cost that is
It's an
incurred.
interesting question, yes.
But who's paying that cost?
Right. Our grandchildren, right? The world.
Or us.
Right.
When I pay for something, I want to pay for all of the costs that went into making that thing.
Right.
I don't feel good about paying a cost that doesn't, because some of the other costs were kind of like, put off on somebody else.
Right.
If I incurred a cost by a creation of a thing, I want to pay for it. So that's the purpose of internalizing an externality.
Like, for example, Cambridge just banned plastic bags.
Okay.
Single-use plastic bags. And, it seemed like, the market did not seem to, it seems like if one believes that they are indeed harmful for the environment, and let's stipulate that they are, just for sake of argument, the market didn't seem to, make it so that people wouldn't use them.
Right, you had to internalize that externality. That's where governments come in. That is the purpose of government in one phrase.
You think so?
Internalize externality.
I don't know if I would buy into that.
But we could have 5 shows about this.
That's a big political issue. And, Sherry...
Should have just taxed the bags, but...
Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Why? Why is that? Well, I don't know, but that's a different question.
Banning them is terrible, but...
Do you think so? Why is banning... Why is banning...
maybe it's terrible for the environment, but what if I want to pay that cost? Maybe plastic bags are really important.
Well, you could say the same thing.
I'll pay $60 a bag.
You want to pay the cost for murder or something like that? You could say the same thing, right?
That's what you do when you go to prison. You pay the cost.
Really?
It's really steep.
It's a little different.
It's extremely steep price to murder someone.
Sherry was saying that, well, there really is good scientific evidence that smoking causes cancer, and she talked about DNA damage. So I did an internet search, and I found that from the Duke University Medical Center, for years researchers have published papers that associate chronic stress with chromosomal damage. Now researchers have discovered a mechanism that helps to explain the stress response in terms of DNA damage. And then something from the Auckland Cancer Society Research Center, DNA damage was positively correlated with intake of red and processed meats and dairy products. And then something from Science magazine, which is the sine qua non of scientific journals. I'm not sure I'm using that Latin phrase correctly, but here we go. The sun can induce cancerous DNA damage in skin cells even after the sun sets. I don't know how that works. I didn't read the article.
Yeah.
But And then one from, let's say, a journal called Medical Daily, an online journal. Even moderate consumption of alcohol may have an adverse effect on your DNA, according to a new study.
Okay.
And then the last two is diet sodas contain something that many regular sodas don't, mold inhibitors. These chemicals have the ability to cause severe damage to DNA, according to Peter Piper, a professor of molecular biology and biotechnology at the University of Sheffield. And then the last one is sugary soft drinks, not the diet soft drinks, but the sugary soft drinks may be linked to accelerated DNA aging. Oh, and the last one is sedentary lifestyle may make us genetically old before our time. So my point is, there are researchers coming up. I mean, it's very sexy to say DNA damage.
Do you think this is sexy?
Well, it certainly strikes a chord with people because they hear DNA damage and they kind of like, freak out, or they get very, and so here we have a lot of people associated just about everything that one could encounter in one's life, including the sunshine and sedentary lifestyle and fatty foods and either sugary or non-sugary soft drinks, and it's all associated with DNA damage, according to these studies.
Okay.
And that indicates to me that it's probably frivolous research that's, got able to produce some kind of change in the DNA in some way with some cell and some petri dish, and all of a sudden a press release goes out to the media.
So I think what would be useful in this case is a literature review where you look at, for instance, all of the studies concerning DNA damage and consumption of sugary beverages, and you look at all the different results, because we anticipate that by convention, we choose a significance level of 5%. That means that even if the effect isn't real, we should expect that 5% of the studies will show that it's real and 95% won't, right?
Keldin, we are out of time. I've talked too much. I apologize. We get down to this confidence thing that I don't really know if I buy, but we've only got 10 seconds. So thanks for watching. When Keldin comes back, we'll get into that.
We shall. Thank you.